Kobayashi-san Shino Maid the Dragon, or Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, is a pretty good anime. If you want a spoiler-free review, there it is. It's cute, it's pretty innocuous, it's funny and lighthearted, and it makes a lot of good jokes related to cute girls who also happen to be dragons somehow, even if it does have some lewd moments. Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, henceforth referred to as Dragon Maid for simplicity's sake, is a slice-of-life anime starring a normal working woman who happens upon a wounded dragon, and after rescuing her from a mortal wound and learning her name is Toru, gets to know her and realizes that dragons and humans aren't so different after all. Later, another dragon named Kana comes to the human world searching for Toru, and it turns out to look like this cute little girl in her human form. Then later, a little mage boy named Shota tries to summon a demon, and when the well-endowed Luca appears instead by coincidence, he's convinced she's a demon, and that's the entire premise of their relationship, is that he thinks that this dragon girl is a demon and she bounces her tits around and people clap and laugh. Kana goes to school and meets this girl named Kiko, whose entire character is, I'm 6 and also a lesbian. The roster of characters is small enough that you don't feel overwhelmed, although we could pick off all the non-essential characters and the show would lose nothing in the process. But the core group is enough to feel like the cast is well-rounded. The characters possess aspects that naturally form into a comedic setup. Toru is a dragon who doesn't understand that the key to blending into the human world is by looking subtle, so the joke results from her being incredibly tactless and bold. She chases down a purse thief and destroys him with a powerful kick, and for a moment it looks like her cover is busted. But then everyone flips out and celebrates her victory, and you're sitting there like, oh okay, this isn't a super serious show, I can get into that. The cast attempts to perform a Christmas play at an old folks home, and Fafnir decides it would be more appropriate to turn a simple little fable into a fucking magical girl conflict. And the old people are just like, dude, this is fucking sweet, look at those special effects, which are literal flames that could bring down the building and no one seems to care. It's a simple twist of a premise that makes the episodes interesting, but it's the characters' blunt or unexpected reactions to them that make things funny. And on the topic of Fafnir, he's someone who has absolutely no relevance to the story, and as far as one-note characters go, he's amazing. He's a cursed dragon who detests humans, and I mean genuine, violent hatred of humans. But because he's so full of angst and indifference, he views them as more of a nuisance and avoids them whenever possible. He ends up moving in with Kobayashi's co-worker, Takiya, who's a salaryman by day but a hardcore otaku by night. And soon Fafnir's interests shift away from wanting to murder all humans and drifts towards wanting to play MMOs and shooter games. He's this insanely powerful dragon and he gets introduced to the temptations of video games and he's like, yeah, I guess total destruction can wait for a while. Kobayashi is of course a pretty great main character. While Toru is a dragon who's new to human society and the show takes that as an opportunity to turn her into an energetic, loyal puppy dog, Kobayashi is basically a realistic lesbian. Normally anime takes your typical glorified lipstick lesbians and makes the entire show about them trying to get into each other's pants for the viewer's amusement. But with this show they decided a formally dressed, flat-chested, and existentially bankrupt woman on the brink of having a quarter-life crisis who drinks to excess and has an obsession with young women donning frilly garments and maintaining an unblemished household would be a more refreshing take on the romantic comedy slash slice-of-life genre, and who the fuck would have guessed they'd be right? When all the other characters are acting like hyper-eccentric sociopaths, Kobayashi's just existing from moment to moment to try to salvage the calamity caused by having a crew of dragons existing in polite society. And sometimes you feel kind of bad for her because, I mean, well, just look at her. She's clearly depressed already and these assholes aren't making it any better. She's easy to relate to because I think most of us can identify with working full-time and having to renew your driver's license at the DMV on your only day off. She's essentially the personification of a miserable working adult who's watching her youth pass her by, and that makes her feel very real. What saves her is the fact that she's clearly a very polite and considerate person who has good judgment and takes care of her responsibilities. It's her limited emotional expression that makes her so interesting to observe. She clearly has a bit of a crush on Toru and it's never fully flushed out. All they really do is cute stuff like holding hands. But if you ask me, Toru is a silly one-note character who's too busy being affectionate, hyperactive, and trying to get Kobayashi to eat her fucking tail for the 12th time to be an interesting or otherwise beneficial character. Considering how she's essentially the show's mascot, I'm a little disappointed by how dumb she is. In fact, the worst thing about this show is most of the other characters. You have the previously mentioned Takiya, Kobayashi's co-worker, who doesn't do anything interesting unless he's off the clock. Then he transforms into a super weird otaku with swirly glasses and buck teeth, who basically just plays games when he's home. It's nothing bad, but it's mostly, well, nothing. Kobayashi's otaku side is that she's super into maids. You have Elma, who's only introduced in the 8th episode as a playful rival to Toru, and then she almost immediately starts trying to blend into the human world for a variety of reasons, and then she never does anything. She's like fucking Mogi from Death Note, just hanging out back there, coming and going whenever the writers feel like it. Her contribution to the show was a momentary bit of tension, and then they just said, yeah, never mind, she's coding now, no one cares. Kana is an enjoyable character who fills the cuteness quota for every episode following her introduction, and her segments were all really good. Whenever Kana's on screen, I'm happy. But eventually Kana meets this girl named Riko who seems to have a crush on her, and the show puts non-stop emphasis on Kana seemingly giving this girl either extreme happiness or something more, you know, X-rated. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to kink shame anyone for what they're into, and I know Yuri and Innocence and everything is very popular in Japan, but I was pretty surprised as to just how frequently and at random these segments would pop up. Most of the time it's when they make any kind of innocuous physical contact, and other times it's being told something that excites Riko, like Kana calling her a friend. But when it's a reaction to being given cafeteria leftovers, I don't. Even more obnoxious is the general existence of Shota and Luca, who add literally nothing to the show. I mean, I guess Luca will sometimes provide exposition to justify her space in the main opening, you know, where she's singing and doing a little dance. But more often than not, they use her as an opportunity to pull in the perverted crowd, much to the show's detriment. Now don't get me wrong, I understand how having sexy people on your show can attract a very large portion of the American audience that wouldn't otherwise watch it if not for that sweet TNA factor. But in this show's case, it's uncomfortable and difficult to justify. If she was just a character who happened to have big boobs and she was in the cast, and people didn't make a big deal out of it, I wouldn't care at all. I'd be like, yeah, some people have big boobs, sure. But she must be existing in zero gravity where her tits can just exist in a constant state of floaty jiggling, at least if the sound effect their movement emits is any indication. The writers basically sat down one day and said, dude, what if we have this blonde dragon girl jump up and down over and over in multiple scenes, and we show people nearby getting aroused? And what if we just keep doing that every time this character is on screen to condition the viewers to make porn of her? Not to mention the show basically has her molesting this little boy she lives with to appeal to all the Shotacons. And if this wasn't obvious enough pandering, they went ahead and named the kid Shota as well. Like if Kana and Riko just had more cutesy romantic scenes, I wouldn't really mind. There's this one scene near the end where they're having a sleepover and they get all cuddly and sentimental, and that was alright. If we could just get more of those and less of the random O faces we see where she's blushing beet red, her eyes are going towards the back of her head, her eyebrow is contorted in a weird pain-pleasure hybrid, and she has a heart appear over her tongue. You may as well have cut the bullshit and just give her an ahegao face. It's basically the same thing. What I'm trying to say is, when I want to see sexual stuff, I look at porn. I'm not trying to be sex negative, as I know ecchi lewd stuff is pretty common in most anime nowadays, and I might just be in the vast minority here, but when a show's trying so hard to make me unzip my pants, it has the opposite effect, and it just serves as a major distraction from the things I do like about the show. And then I feel manipulated. Like if I do go and look at porn of Luco, I can feel the show's artist leaning over my shoulder like, yes, all according to plan. But Fafnir wins my heart because he's addicted to MMOs, so I'd want that dude in my guild. We are always recruiting. Slice of life shows are pretty easy to gauge as to whether or not it's something you'll like. Do you enjoy cute girls? This show will entertain you. Do you want a deeper, more meaningful connection that makes you feel like these two-dimensional characters are plausibly real personalities somewhere out there? Don't expect Maid Dragon to blow you away. The entire show is very surface level, which again, for a slice of life show, isn't terrible. If you're really looking for a show about meaningful characters that have heart as well as the ability to communicate their inner thoughts, go watch My Love Story. I reviewed it a few years back and it still holds my top spot for best romantic comedy anime. People will forget about this anime in a month.